Welcome to this week's episode of the Foresting Tomorrow podcast.
Thank you.
On the opposite side of this table, we have Rasmus, the tech whiz. And then on my left side, we have Benjamin, the forest whiz. And myself, the whiz.
You should pronounce me as doctor. Still aren't doing it.
Yeah, Dr. Rasmus.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, so as everyone on this planet, we have also been talking about Trump sometimes, and one of the things that has been said a couple of times in this podcast is the sentence, drill, baby, drill. But there's actually some great news from the United States in terms of doing something good for the planet, because for the first time ever, the United States generated more electricity from clean sources than from fossil fuels in a single month. And it's actually March 25 where wind and solar reached a record high. Together they produced 24.4% of US electricity. Meanwhile, of course, fossil fuels dropped below 50%. So it's not all bad in the United States.
Is that something Trump has done?
He will definitely claim it as one of his successes. So 10 years ago, fossil fuels still made up 65% of U.S. electricity. So 15% in 10 years. And it's a pretty big shift. Solar alone has gone from 1% in 25 to 9% now. And expected...
24, right? Or what?
No, that was wind and solar. So just solar, from 1% to 9%.
Yeah,
the last 10 years.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah, and it's actually expected to account for more than half of all new capacity added in 25.
Yeah,
solar is big.
They also have some good areas in the US for solar because they are placed fairly south. So.
Yeah.
Well.
I wonder if there's a company, if there's a company owned by a man who does something on solar that is close to the president.
Maybe. Someone. Solar City.
Solar City?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Right. Okay, yeah, that was just a quick one to get us all excited. So there is actually good stuff going on.
Yeah, can I add a comment to it? Because that's also when he was elected with the whole drill, baby, drill, that there are things in motion that not he even can stop. And that is that for a lot of cases...
It seems like he can stop everything.
Yeah, but in this, for renewable energy, the business case is just good now. So So
of course that...
Yeah, so there's so many, there are so many things in motion that you cannot stop them in 4 years. So I believe that this will just continue.
Yeah.
Even though drill, baby, drill is a thing.
But his presidency will also continue.
You think?
No.
Then we are screwed on so many levels.
Yeah. Okay, enough said on solar and Trump. Now we need to move on. And actually, I'm looking at you, Benjamin, because last time we talked about Finland forests now emit more CO2 than they absorb. And we discussed that quite a bit.
Yes.
And I think I said that maybe you could do a follow-up.
You did, yes.
In this episode. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. In general, in Europe, the forests are, let me explain the LULUCF sector first, because that's what was talked about in the article.
Yeah.
So that the LULUCF sector is how every country reports their emissions and uptake of CO2 in cropland, grassland, wetlands, forests, and settlements. So it's kind of that's one sector, and all of these things are together in that sector.
Yeah.
And countries are recording the uptake of CO2 and the emissions, reporting that to the EU, and each country is supposed to, make a climate plan addressing all of these issues. And the LULUCF regulation, puts out these goals of small goals of we need to, increase forest or CO2 sequestration by maybe 15% in 2030 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's a lot of different land uses in LULUCF. Stands for land use and land use change and forestry. So there's different land uses besides forestry, and forests are seen as a carbon sink. So it in general with sustainable management, so it removes carbon from the atmosphere. And for example, cropland, grassland, and wetlands are sources, so they emit more CO2 than they uptake. And that was one of the things in Finland, is that the growth was declining, and also there's a lot of peat and wetlands, frozen peat in the tundra or the taiga up there.
Mm-hmm.
And with climate change, the increasing temperatures, they will melt and emit peat. And peat is one of the biggest emitters in this sector, so that is a big one. And but it is true that the absorption of CO2 in this sector is decreasing, but it is still absorbing CO2 in most countries. But it is true that it is decreasing because of climate change and because of forest fires and wind throw and pests and diseases and these things are all contributing to it decreasing. And the European Environment Agency says that carbon removals have decreased in the last 10 years, mainly as a result of harvesting of wood and lower sequestration of carbon by aging forests.
Okay.
And I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because how would you stop an aging forest, or how would you make an aging forest absorb more CO2? In my view, you would harvest and plant it new. But if the regulation has these short-term goals, that doesn't work. And harvesting wood, you could stop harvesting wood, but the regulation also doesn't really talk about the substitution effect. And also, if you stopped harvesting wood, you would put the problem somewhere else, and they would have to harvest more. You can just stop harvesting. And as far as I know, no one in EU is harvesting more than the yearly growth.
Yeah.
So yeah. And Sweden has actually talked a lot about this. They are they would like more long-term goals in the LULUCF sector, because it doesn't really make sense to them to work so hard for long-term goals, because forests are not short-term. And they also say that if they need to harvest less, they will just move the problem elsewhere.
Yeah.
And Sweden is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, contributor to CO2 uptake, because they have so much forest.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of details in this. But yeah, I kind of understand why Sweden is a bit, they question the regulation a bit, in that sense.
Who's behind LULUCF? Is that the United Nations or?
Yeah, the EU. I think it's the regulation sets out that the member states of the EU needs to.
Okay, so it's an EU thing.
I'm not sure about that one. I didn't look too much into that one. I looked at the most practical.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But I would assume so.
But maybe this is just also an illustration of you can't just take all land use in one pot and say something. It's more complex than that. Of course, you can do it, but it doesn't kind of translate well into what is forestry in this and what is the other land use. And then if you just collect everything in one, you can come to the conclusion that forestry is in a bad state. But maybe it isn't, because it's just been pulled down by all the others.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of people look at this sector as sort of the savior, or when another sector is emitting a lot of CO2, they look at this and it's doing quite well with the forest and stuff, and they would say, why would you harvest it then? It's doing so well. So we need to not harvest so we can keep up the high production of the other sectors, keep emitting CO2, and use this as like a sort of offsetting sector instead of
But then you completely neglect that forests also have a purpose, which is produce wood.
Yeah.
That needs to go to consumers.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a problem, Benjamin, or is everything good?
I mean, the European Environment Agency, like I said, does a lot of work on this, and they say that CO2 uptake is decreasing.
Yeah,
and that is, I guess, worrying. But a lot of.
But it's also worrying that the climate changes are actually affecting the CO2 uptake.
I mean, that is the biggest problem.
That is like a
what you will call positive feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. They also write that is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to.
It's a complex problem.
It's no joke. In climate change, we need to like you said, it's a positive feedback loop. If you don't do anything, it will only get worse.
Yeah,
that's also one of the issues. But it's the same with the ice is melting at the poles. It's the same issue, right? Because what the ice also does is it reflects the sunlight back into into space, and the less ice you have, the less it's being reflected.
Yeah,
and then it heats up more, and then more ice melts, and then that's also positive. Like
that's actually there's been some models saying that if you cut down all trees where there's snow, and it will actually be better for the environment, because then the snow will reflect.
Yeah.
So there's no trees to
stop the sun.
Obviously, that will never happen. But
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Where did you read that?
I can't remember.
Okay, that's interesting.
We talked about it in school, I think.
That's funny. Okay, but thank you, Benjamin.
No problem. I'm no expert on this, but
you took a deep dive.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. And the next story that I have is actually from a country, at least in terms of forestry, that we haven't been talking about. So the story goes, and it's actually a story that was brought to me by Tom Coates, or at least he was the one that had it on LinkedIn. So I grabbed it and brought it into this podcast. So Xi Jinping in China.
We like that. Okay, I can't say the word. The dictators today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Xi Jinping renews push for China's green assets through massive tree planting. Apparently, they're quite big on that. Okay, so China doubled down on afforestation, planting trees not just for the planet, but for people and prosperity. Chinese President Xi Jinping has once again led a national tree planting effort, now marking 13 consecutive years of personally participating in the initiative. His message: tree planting is a green investment in China's long-term future, economy and environment. So here's some facts for you, babies. That was a bit few one, almost.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 24 alone, China planted 4.45 million hectares of trees, and improved 3.22 million hectares of grassland. Forest cover has doubled since the 80s, rising from 12% to over 25% of total land area. Okay,
Impressive.
it's really impressive.
That's what that country can do.
China. Wait for the questions.
Yeah.
So China has now has the world's largest man-made forest area and aims to plant 7 billion trees by 32. The Tree North Shelter Belt Forest Program, TSFP, is the world's largest afforestation effort, eventually covering over 4 million square kilometers, about 72 of China's total land area. That's crazy. She calls forest a form of green GDP, linking them to poverty reduction, ecotourism, and carbon sinks, of course. So Xi Jinping says that increasing green coverage is to bring greater development strength, and planting trees is to plant the future. That's a very Chinese thing to say. So China's approach positions forest not just an environmental tool, but also an economic infrastructure. Programs like this TSFP also show how large-scale afforestation can tackle desertification, store carbon, support livelihood. For other countries, it raises
desertification.
stop
deserts from forming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For other countries, it raises the question: can tree planting scale like infrastructure, and should it? Okay, so here are some questions for you, Benjamin. How realistic is it for other countries to follow? Maybe I should ask you this question. You can do it both. So how realistic is it for other countries to follow China's lead in afforestation of this scale? And it's pretty relevant.
I mean, we're trying.
Yeah, we're trying. It's just 250,000 hectares.
It's the landowners can decide for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they can do that in China.
Nope.
So that's one of the big problems in Denmark, at least, that it has to be, they have to do it themselves. I want to.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how we want to do it, and we have to agree. And
not political system.
It's not how they roll in China.
No, but that's because we have a political system and we have rights.
Yeah,
to own our own stuff and stuff like that, and they don't have that in China. But that also means that they can move extremely quickly.
Yeah,
and that's
and apparently also on good things.
Yeah. That's, back in the days, I'm not sure it's like that anymore, but they also put up a lot of wind capacity. That didn't necessarily mean that it worked. So, one thing is saying it, what the other thing is doing it, but it also seems like it takes a lot of work, And I can't say if that's even realistic, but again, that's what China can do. They can just remove a city. It's not something they didn't do before.
Yeah.
And that's the power of a dictatorship, is that one man can choose something and then it happens.
Yeah.
That's also why they now, China has almost, it's completely electronic, all the payments and all that. They have moved extremely quickly in that sense. And that comes with a lot of ease, right? The system is very functioning and very efficient.
Yeah.
But it also comes with a lot of other things. It's also the most surveilled country in the world. And in China, you have what's called a social score. So that means if you, for example, jaywalk, and it's caught on camera.
Moonwalk.
What, jaywalk?
Moonwalk.
Probably also that. I don't know if that's a felony in China, probably. But it means that if that's caught on camera, they have a lot of facial recognition and stuff like that. They just decline your social score and even just they just take the money directly off your
I
account.
think we should have something similar to that in Denmark.
If you have people moonwalk, I agree.
No, it's because I'm so, I always do, stuff perfect, and I'm just a
right.
good guy. So
You
maybe
have a high score.
I would
have
have
a
a high score.
A
Very
high
high
social score.
Yeah.
Let's see if that changes in a couple of days. No, but you can build extremely efficient systems, especially if you don't have to think about human rights or anyone caring or having anything. You can just move things around very easily, and that's of course nice in this case. You get a lot of trees.
Yeah,
but one of the numbers you said was it above 70% of the area they wanted to like.
Let me go back.
I know they are 12% now. They're going for. No, they're 25 now almost.
They're 25 now.
Yeah,
which is a lot.
Yeah, that's also what we're aiming for in Denmark, right?
Yeah.
Can you remember the year?
I think
it was a 100-year plan, right? And it was agreed in 70 or 80.
It's a long time ago they wanted to do it. But
okay. Yeah, because we have this 2050 plan, which is made like 25 years ago or something like that. Okay. And we are like at 14 or something, like 15 maybe.
Yeah,
so let's say something about how a political system kind of can really slow this progress down.
Yeah. But a funny thing about so when Corona hit, of course, I think every nation with a high degree of democracy, moved quickly in terms of.
Yeah, you're right.
So it can be done, but it just needs extreme sort of situations.
And that's the thing about
for it to work.
Yeah, that's the thing about climate change is that it kind of slowly gets at you, and so the urgency is not that great. But with Corona, it quickly became a big thing because of course, of a lot of people dying in Italy. And maybe also, that's the easy thing to say, right? In retrospect, is that they probably also moved a little too quick in some senses, but that's how it went down. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That was an example of how you can, at least for some things, you can actually move really quickly in a political system.
Yeah. Okay, so Benjamin, what should forest owners and policymakers prioritize when balancing quantity versus ecological quality in tree planting? So not just, throwing trees in the ground, but it also, should have some ecological benefits.
Yeah, you can't you have to do that nowadays. The species must fit the location.
Yep.
That's also one of the things now we talk about. Slow growth is one of the reasons that carbon uptake is decreasing.
Yeah.
In Denmark, in the 1999, we had a big storm, and afterwards we had funding to replant these or reforest these areas, and there was a big grant or big fund for broadleaf trees. So when you go to a forest owner and ask what do you want to plant, you can plant this and you will get this much money to do it, or you can plant this and they will take the highest amount.
Yeah.
And then you plant broadleaves on an area that is not suited for broadleaves. And today, 20 years later, there's no trees there.
Yeah.
So there's no CO2 uptake for 20 years. So fitting the right species to the right area is very important.
Yeah.
And another thing when we talk about China is in Denmark we export a lot of wood to China actually. Yeah. And Grand Fir is quite popular in Denmark right now because it is basically the highest producing species.
Yeah.
There's some places on good locations, 50 cubic meters per year. Insane growth.
Yeah.
But it's not, you can't use it for construction in Denmark. It's not approved for that. So we ship it to China, for example. These huge logs in containers,
Mm.
and it's a very good price. And I'm thinking if China increases their forest area, at some point they might not need this grand fir from Denmark.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are planting grand fir in Denmark.
Yeah,
And if we
it's
can't
too
send
late.
if we can't send it to China anymore, you can basically only make pallets off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something I think about quite a bit. It's very, very popular to plant in Denmark right now.
So that's actually an advice. No.
I don't know if it's advice because it is very, and in the future you might.
It's a thing to note for forest owners and forest managers.
Yeah, but who knows? In the future you might only need to produce fibers, and then
Yeah, you're right.
it's incredible for that because it's produces so much.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know, if this can work well with the whole engineered wood, but it's probably less strong. So yeah, but
it would. If you glue it together, it will be strong.
okay.
So I think it will be approved in some way. I'm sure.
Yeah, and if you can produce it easily and a lot of it.
Is it easy to produce in Denmark at least? Does it have its quirks in some?
It's quite hard to get going.
Okay.
But once you get it going, it's quite good.
Okay.
And that's most of the area in Denmark where it's good. It's not like it's only on the Sealand or it's only on the west coast.
It is actually quite good a lot of places.
Okay.
It doesn't really like there's a lot of frost. It's not.
Okay.
Like I said, it's hard to get going.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. So Rasmus, could satellite monitoring and digital mapping help verify and manage afforestation efforts like China's on a global scale?
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. That it's not just something you say; that it's actually happening. You can monitor it, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing about satellites. It's a bit hard for any country to do anything about the satellites above them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it could be monitored, of course, if they are having success with this, and because I'm not saying that this will be done, but you could also use stuff like that to justify, just producing more CO2. Just saying, we're planting a lot of trees, so we can do this. So, of course, we would like to know that the trees are actually being planted and they are actually growing, because just planting them ain't saying a lot. Just, if they all die, then it doesn't really matter, right? So, yeah, it makes perfect sense to use it. The question is, what if they don't do what they say? Will it even affect anything? It'll of course affect the climate, but will it affect anything politically? Or I don't know. Maybe we can at least still sell the grand fir to China.
That's right. Okay, so let's wrap this one up. What's your sort of final comment on this story? I can start. You can hate China for it, the way that they do stuff, but it's still mind blowing how fast they can shift things. Yeah, it amazes me every time.
Also, sometimes I don't even know what to believe when it comes to China. If it's
then you have the satellites.
Yeah, if they're praising themselves, or if it's
That's always a good when anyone says I'm good at this, but I agree that this illustrates the power of a dictatorship, and that's also why China has 50 years plans, where all Western countries have 4-year plans.
It's just like a family-owned business.
Yeah,
it's way better than something that is okay.
Unless it spins out of control, which happens. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. It's a real nice story for you, Rasmus. It's a really techy one. So Lithuania scientists built an AI system for real-time forest monitoring. Oh, yeah. You're really excited.
It's
okay. So Tech Mysteries, a Lithuanian research team is using AI and sound analysis to monitor and predict forest changes in real time. Researchers from Kaunas, Kaunas. Do you know that?
Yeah, I know the university.
Kaunas University of Technology, KTU, have developed advanced AI-driven system to help forest managers react faster to threats, threats like climate change, pests, and environmental stress before it's too late. So here are some facts. So forest changes are happening faster than we can track them, says a professor called Ritus Masculinus. Not quite, but that's what we're going to call him. Okay, so the tool include a forest regeneration model that forecasts how forest will evolve over time, and then a real-time sound analysis system to detect early changes in forest health. The model uses Markov chains and time series decomposition to simulate growth, mortality, and ecosystem shifts. It also helps identify which species to plant where and when forests are most vulnerable to pest or drought. Sound sensors can detect things like changes in biodiversity, pest activity, or even illegal logging. Okay. So,
It almost sounds like my April Fool's.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah. So, the professor Rutus Masculinus, which is not called, but that's my best way to pronounce it. We will never have enough people to continuously observe what is happening in the forest. AI enables us to act before the damage is irreversible. So this system blends monitoring and prediction, giving forest managers a clearer, faster view of changing conditions without relying on field visits alone. As forests become more unpredictable, AI and acoustic monitoring could offer a new safety net. So, Rasmus, you laughed about a Markov change.
No, yeah. I'll get back to that. Do you know what he's a professor in? It sounds like, my best guess, it's something to do with acoustics.
Yeah.
Because that almost sounds like, okay, I have my area of expertise. Now I need to apply it to something, and okay, nature, forest, green transition. We have funding in that. Can we do something there? And then slap in some AI. Now we have a project. So back to the dimension of time series analysis and Markov change. So this is, these have been around for many years and are used in a lot of stuff.
I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, try to explain what it is.
It easily becomes very technical. But it's a mathematical way of constructing or structuring a way of looking at data. And it's not that neural networks are new in any way. That's also an old, let's say, technology of how to doing, and that's what you typically do now with these large language models or AI in general, or machine learning in general, is that you use these deep neural networks. So Markov chains and time series, it's just another way of doing something. You're looking generally looking for some values for some parameters, and this is a way of doing it. But these are older, or how should I say, older technologies than the others, and this has been around, especially in electronic systems and so on, for many, many years. So it's just again, I would like to, and also in acoustic, analysis, especially before you had, back in the days when you want to do something like voice recognition system or these things, you would try with the technologies such as these like time series, ARMA models and Markov change and stuff like that to try to model it, because that was kind of the toolbox. Also because it's not necessarily as computational heavy as the other things that we mentioned. So that's why you would try to use that. from my point of view, it looks like someone trying to find a project and looking where the funding is. It seems a little, acoustic. To what track what? Yeah, illegal logging. Yeah, probably. Where are you placing all those microphones?
Yeah.
So you need to spread a lot of microphones.
What's the range?
Yeah, exactly. So now you're doing a lot of manual work anyways. So I'm probably still back to the satellite thing if I was to look at it in a more practical manner.
Yeah.
You could probably recognize a tree species. Populus tremula. Bæverasp in Danish. It has a very,
No, when it in the wind? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it is also the thing that now they wanted to use it to track biodiversity by listening to the sounds of different animals, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Probably you can do that somehow with a Markov chain. But
At least it's an input,
Yeah.
Where there'll come a lot of data.
Yeah, and I totally understand the research community and what they're trying to do, and that's how the funding landscape is. Yeah. You have an area and expertise, and you need to find money to keep on researching that, and that's fine. That's how it is. That's how we structure it. But from a societal point of view, we need to get bang from the buck, and I don't know if this is a game changer. For me, at least on paper, it doesn't sound like it changes anything. There's probably other technologies or other ways of being more efficient, I would guess.
Yeah.
So,
do you remember this early detection of
wildfires?
Yeah. When it's in the blooming stage or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the range of these sensors?
No, I can't even remember what they exactly did. Was it temperature or was it? I guess it wasn't like thermal cameras or something like that. So I can't remember exactly how the technology was.
But at least there was some specification on the the area that a sensor could cover.
Yeah, you're right.
I would assume this is worse, with sound.
At least you know also from sound that you get a lot of noise in sound. The wind and everything, and sound it's hard. Now we actually have some voice assistants that work fairly well, but it's still a pain. At least for me, I can't get into work probably, and that's because it's a really hard problem.
And it's really getting good.
Yeah, it's getting much better.
It's so good that they sometimes turn on without you wanting them to.
Yeah. Yeah, and my kids, if they are to find anything on the TV, they don't zap around or spelling; they just talk to it.
Yeah.
So there's of course that in it, but given all those issues that can be with sound and the sensors can just be off or not working and so on. So it just seems like spreading a lot of microphones around in these areas, which I guess it's also to monitor large areas, because if it was small areas, then we could still actually do it manually. Then you need to spread all these microphones out there, and who's going to maintain them, make sure they work, collect the data. So there's still a lot of work. So yeah.
So Benjamin, what benefits and potential risk do you see in shifting some forest monitoring responsibilities from people to machines?
I'm always a bit, before I've seen, some results, I'm always skeptical of these things. Because, a lot of it is, you're walking through the forest and you see things and you make decisions and it can change from one year to another. So yeah, I'm always a bit skeptical, before I've seen actual results of what it can do.
Yeah, but it's also the funny thing about gut feeling. What's that actually based on? I remember one time at the study we had something about this, and the experience and the learnings that you have throughout the years, so sometimes you can't explain a thing that you feel or a decision you want to take, and it's based on gut feelings and experience and knowledge and everything, There was also some case studies on firefighters because the way that they enter a building and the decisions that they have to make, sometimes most of it rely on experience and gut feeling because you have no chance to know exactly what is going on and where to place yourself and everything. And that's a complex system that I would assume, now I'm not a forest manager or professional in this regard, but I would assume, forest managers, when you walk through a forest and you conduct your survey or whatever, you pick up a lot of things that you're not even aware of, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the bigger estates, the forest manager has been there for 30 years, 40 years, so he knows everything about it.
Yeah,
and he has tried.
At least he thinks he does.
Yeah, and he often does because he's tried so much that hasn't worked.
Yeah,
and suddenly you almost can't try anything that you haven't tried. So you know everything that works pretty much on that location.
Yeah,
you go 100 kilometers in another direction, it can be completely different. But at least at that location, he will walk around and he knows. He can look at a site and he knows, or stand and he knows. I have to thin that this year. It is too late. And I don't know how AI would tell you that, but maybe
the issue with that is that you have built a system with a single point of failure, because what happens if that guy dies?
Yeah, that is true.
Then you can't pass on all that knowledge, and then you just have to start all over again.
Yeah,
and you need some support.
And that's also a thing.
But what happens when the AI gets so expensive because tariffs are being introduced?
I think there's a lot of things in this that it's not just a tech question, it's also a lot of other questions in it.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt for me that we have always done that as a humankind. We've used technology to advance ourselves, and this is just, we should also use technology to advance ourselves here.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of places where you talk about this gut feeling, you can't really, and you should listen to it.
Yeah.
Because there's also other examples of also from firefighting, where you train people to in a certain manner, that if those people, and you should train people in a certain manner, you also use that in the military because you need to have this muscle memory of doing stuff.
Yeah.
But you can train people so much in a certain manner that they lose gut feeling, and then they make the wrong decision if they meet a challenge they haven't been in.
Yeah.
And that's a story from firefighting in the mountains. I've
probably
taught.
We talked about it here.
Yeah, where the guys should have just dropped all their equipment, but the training said you need to keep your equipment.
Yeah.
And then they'd all died.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's for sure also forest managers that have bad habits developed.
Yeah. But that will happen.
But also, there's not always the one completely right decision in forestry. You can.
There isn't in life,
No. So.
Yeah.
So yeah. I forgot what I was going to say, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah. But it's also important that everyone knows the older you get, if you live alone, the weirder you get.
Yeah.
I don't even think you need to live alone. We just get weird.
A lot of forest managers are alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, my
that's
point.
That's your bad habit.
Yeah. But also my point about there's not necessarily one correct decision to make in the forest.
Yeah.
Also helps when there's a new forest manager coming, he will maybe it will be completely different.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
But maybe back to the whole story. I still believe that these early warning systems and stuff like that on pests and on fires, they are because they are devastating also in a global scale. So if you can do anything to kind of do this, use technology to at least create an early warning system, because it's right in a lot of large forest areas, you can't run around and check everything. You need to find another way of getting that information before it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we talk a lot about that a lot in Denmark. We are not that big, so we have. Or me at least, I have like a view that the forest manager, knows the whole forest.
Yeah,
and that's not globally. That's not how it works.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And I guess the only technology that are capable of knowing everything at once is satellite, right?
Well, the thing is that you get this overview from the top right.
Yeah.
And you can get it often.
Yeah.
And that's probably what that would be the first thing you would like to have.
Yeah.
So if just
And you'll never deploy a drone just for, learning stuff. I think you will only deploy a drone because you have something that you need.
you have something
to survey.
Yeah.
Right. You will not just survey, an area just because you want to survey it.
No, and in a sense, a satellite is just a drone, but it's just up there all the time, looking down at us.
Yeah.
So you have that. The capability there, and if you think of it as a human being, what is the first sense you would want to use if you needed to get an overview and understand things? It would be your eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be your ears, the microphones. It would be your eyesight. That's the first thing, and that's what we judge the most of.
Yeah.
And satellites can give you that. So
okay, so now this story, it's sound heavy. Is there any way you could see sound, the input of sound as a good thing, or anything that would actually make sense in terms of? Oh, by the way, Rasmus, there's actually a paper on this. Now you haven't read that, but I'll give it to you afterwards.
thank you.
Then maybe you can do a follow-up next week. Maybe we haven't seen the light of the sound.
Maybe there could be.
Yeah,
It could be me that just simply don't understand why it's needed.
Yeah. But is there any way that you could see sound as an interesting thing in terms of real-time forest monitoring?
I don't know about monitoring, but on my car I have this thing that when you drive, it makes this really high-pitched noise that scares off deer from running.
Your car?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alongside what's it called? With the mirror.
Is something that you have mounted?
Yes.
Okay.
I think some of there's one region in Denmark, they had in the working cars, they always hit deer.
Okay.
So they put this on, and suddenly they didn't hit any deer anymore.
Okay, I've never heard about that. That's kind of cool. That's how I really like technology, right? It's probably fairly simple because you just use the wind to generate the sound.
And I can't hear it.
Humans
can't hear it.
And of course, we need some statistics if it's actually working or it's something we think is working. But that's a nice way of thinking about technology, right?
Yeah.
Let's solve a problem as simple as possible.
Yeah. But I'm asking, picking up sound.
Yeah, I know.
Not really monitoring.
It's hard.
Of course, there is one. The company in Denmark, the Fauna Photonic, right?
Yeah, and they
pick up sound.
Yeah, and
for biodiversity.
Yeah, and that's kind of high technology wise because it's for actually it's not catching deer sounds; it's for catching insect sounds when they use their wings.
Yeah,
so it's really high frequency sound or airwaves probably. But I guess that's what sound is. But that the issue with what they have now at least is that the range of catching is really small, so you need to move it around a lot.
Yeah.
And again, then you're back to this: what is the manual? And that from knowledge from that company to track biodiversity, you needed to be there in a lot of time.
Yeah, but actually, you shouldn't move it around.
No, and if you shouldn't, then you need a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's only like a few meters.
Yeah.
They have of area they can cover.
Mm-hmm.
So then you need a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay, you can say I want to capture biodiversity in this area, and then I can extrapolate something from that.
Yeah.
But this sounds more like they said it was for warning system, right? Illegal logging.
Also for this.
Okay. Yeah, it was also for biodiversity.
Yeah.
But I guess different microphones for different things here, because capturing illegal logging, that probably won't work for illegal logging, I guess.
Yeah, but then again, it's really a harsh sound. I would assume that is fairly easy to at least recognize.
Yeah, if it's a chainsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you won't just rip it up with your hands, right?
But how would you know if it's illegal?
At least you know.
If
I
don't
shouldn't
expect to have that sound, then it's illegal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's not like they use an illegal chainsaw.
No.
That sounds different.
Is it cool if they could capture that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
I
so
should
let
maybe
me
read
just
the
look
paper.
at my questions here. How can predictive tools like this help foresters choose better species mixes or planting strategies in the face of climate stress? Because that's actually also what is being said in the article. Just a second. Where do we have it? So the model has also been applied to assess Lithuania's forest situation, revealing that spruce trees are particularly affected by climate change, becoming increasingly vulnerable due to longer dry periods in summer and warmer winters. Spruce trees, although they grow rapidly in young forests, experience higher mortality rates in later life stages. This is linked to reduced resistance to environmental stress.
And how the sound monitoring is supposed to help with that, or
I don't know exactly what kind of
I think that
technology that is.
That you mentioned that they say that it could be used to model future.
Yeah, the model has been applied to assess, revealing that spruce trees are particular.
Yeah, that you mean. I mean, that's pretty common knowledge that spruce trees are not, well suited for, at least up here in the north.
Yeah.
The
But I guess, I mean, of course, you know the properties of a species, and then you know the climate situation. You don't need. It would be fairly easy to conclude if a certain climate or duration of weather pattern would
Yeah, you would maybe look at the model of the climate change. What will this country look like in 50 years? And then you will find a country that kind of has that climate now.
Yeah.
And then look at what works there.
Yeah.
So in Denmark, for example, it looks a lot like France. So yeah, in during my studies, we went there to look for, and they like Douglas fir and oak. So yeah, that's one way you could look at it.
Yeah. Good. So what's your final verdict on this story?
Scientists need funding, and they will find it wherever they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting, but I need to see results.
Okay. And the results? Oh, not the results, but you'll have a sneak peek on the paper for last.
Yeah, let's do that.
Next one, and then we know a bit more. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. We'll skip one episode because it's Easter next week. So we'll catch every one of you in 2 weeks' time. Okay.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.